Tunic's origins go all the way back to early 2015. Andrew Shouldice was happy working as a programmer at Silverback Games, where he focused on mobile games. However, after 6 years in that role, he felt a strong urge to start a new adventure on his own. Having participated and done well in several game jams, Andrew's friends kept asking when he was finally going to go indie. It made him wonder what he could achieve if he dedicated not just a weekend, but several months of intense work to a project. Eventually, Andrew reached a turning point. I remember thinking to myself, this might be a bad decision, but I would rather make the bad decision now than always wonder what could have been, you know? Which is very cheesy, I understand. But that was sort of the thing that ended up pushing me over the edge. I really want to do this. Maybe it's a bad idea, but I have to know. On the first day of his unemployment, Andrew opened up Unity and started a new project. He didn't have a concrete game idea or concept yet, but he knew he wanted to create a game that captured the feeling of the vast unknown, the sensation of being dropped into a world full of secrets. The protagonist would be a stranger in a strange land, ready to uncover its mysteries. After about 3 weeks, that initial spark of an idea evolved into a single-player action-adventure game titled Secret Legend. When it came to the protagonist, Andrew wanted to shorten the distance between the player and the player character, allowing people to feel as though they were truly part of the world. In an interview with VentureBeat, Andrew explained that the most straightforward way to create a connection between the player and the character is through a character creator. However, early in development, he wasn't very confident or skilled in 3D modeling. After all, this was his first attempt at a large-scale commercial 3D game. As a result, he struggled to create a convincing human character, even with a cartoonish art style. That's when the idea of an anthropomorphic fox popped in Andrew's head, and he hasn't looked back since. It made sense to him. Foxes are known for getting into trouble. Just by looking at early builds of the game, it's no surprise that The Legend of Zelda was a big influence. However, according to Andrew, the Zelda series provided mostly emotional inspiration. More than anything, he wanted to capture the sense of wonder and mystery he experienced as a kid playing the original Zelda on his NES, exploring the unknown, flipping through the manual and trying to make sense of a cryptic world. Andrew has a soft spot for games that offer very little direction. Aside from, go find the treasure, it's out there somewhere. Like the original Zelda, he wanted his own game to take place in a beautiful, colorful world that provides a challenging experience, one that encourages players to be brave and venture into areas they might not be ready for. Filling the world with countless secrets to uncover was also a top priority. When it came to the graphics, Andrew wasn't interested in evoking nostalgia by making it look like a top-down pixel art game. Instead, he's always been a fan of the isometric perspective. Not just in video games, but in general. There's something deeply satisfying to him about how things look from that angle. Choosing this camera angle was especially fitting because it allows for secrets to be hidden in plain sight, making it perfect for tucking away secret items and areas. However, it also presented unique challenges, like having to deal with geometry that needs to be placed just right or animations that need to be even more polished. Before we move on, I'd like to talk about this video's sponsor, GameMaker. GameMaker is the ultimate 2D game engine that makes game development easy, regardless of your background or skill level. I've covered a bunch of indie games on my channel, and some of the most popular ones, like Undertale, Risk of Rain, and Hyper Light Drifter, were all made using GameMaker. It offers everything you need and more to make your own game development dreams come true, even if you've never made a game before. Thanks to GameMaker's intuitive visual coding system, learning how to create games has never been easier. Of course, you can also switch to purely using code the old-fashioned way. Furthermore, its robust creative tools lets you create your own 2D sprites, tile sets, and backgrounds on the fly. By using the sequence editor, you can even make amazing-looking animations and cutscenes, so there's no need to look for additional software. GameMaker's powerful debugger tool saves you precious time by identifying bugs in seconds to keep your game running smoothly. Once the game of your dreams is finished, you can export it for free for non-commercial use to all non-console platforms. If you're ready to go to the next level and attach a price tag to your game, all you have to do is purchase a one-time perpetual license and you're all set. Additionally, the GameMaker community is very active on social media, so you can always reach out on the official forums or platforms like Reddit and Discord if you have any questions or need help with a specific problem. Download GameMaker using the link in the description and start building games today. Now back to the video. As mentioned earlier, Andrew's 3D modeling skills were still at a basic level, so he opted for simple, abstract polygon designs to create the game's expansive world. As his modeling skills improved over time, it became more challenging to strike a balance between a style that was abstract and visually interesting, distinct from hyper-realistic video games, while still feeling convincingly real. If there was too much detail, the game lost some of its unique visual identity. On the other hand, if it looked too simple, it seemed unfinished. It took years to find the right look. During that time, Monument Valley was a significant inspiration, especially in the early stages. Andrew admired its well-considered color palette, and the way its bounced lighting made the world appear as if it were gently glowing, an effect he wanted to emulate. Reflecting on his love for wonder and mystery in video games, Andrew realized that his love came not just from the games themselves, but also from the manuals they were packaged with. As a boy, he would watch the neighborhood kids play games like Metroid 2 while he flipped through the instruction booklets. Even though he was still learning to read and didn't understand all the words, the images left a lasting impression on him. For Andrew, soaking in the illustrations, maps, and tips were part of the magic of solving mysteries and uncovering hidden secrets. He believes that some manuals were even integral to the overall game design. For example, in the original Zelda, there are things you can't discover unless you carefully read every page of the instruction booklet, adding a fun meta layer to the gaming experience. Andrew wanted to capture the experience of not fully understanding what's on the pages of a manual, yet they still encouraged the player to experiment and explore the world. Within the first few months of development, he created a mechanic that allows players to collect pages and view them as if they were flipping through a real instruction booklet. Each page contains valuable information, such as level maps, enemy weaknesses, explanations of mechanics, and various hints that can lead to discovering secrets. To evoke the feeling of reading a manual written in a language you don't fully understand yet, the pages feature a mix of English and strange symbols from a language Andrew created himself. The idea of inventing an entirely new language was partly inspired by Fez, which features its own unique language. Unlike Fez, however, Andrew wanted to make it more difficult to translate the glyphs into English, as that wasn't intended to be part of the experience or provide any deeper meaning. Instead, the secret language was designed to enhance the feeling of being in a place where you don't belong and don't fully understand. Therefore, a simple letter-to-letter cipher wouldn't cut it. Instead, Andrew created a phoneme-based language. Without getting too technical, in linguistics, phonemes are the smallest units of sound in spoken language, represented by the International Phonetic Alphabet. They help distinguish one word from another in a particular language. While letters represent individual sounds in written language, phonemes are the oral elements that give spoken words their distinctive identities. For example, phonemes explain why similar-looking words like big and bug sound so different. Andrew also wanted the language to appear as an amalgamation of various elements so it wouldn't resemble any existing language. Additionally, since the game features a strong hexagonal theme, he incorporated hexagonal shapes and structures into the design of the language itself. In terms of the combat, Andrew envisioned something more varied and technical than the original Zelda. One of the most exhilarating moments for him in a game is encountering something scary and feeling the thrill of, I need to run away or I need to deal with this. This is why he remembers his first time playing Dark Souls so fondly. Initially, Andrew aimed to create his own version of a traditional Souls-like combat system, one that is deliberate, requires careful thought, and encourages observation and patience, while also giving players the opportunity to dodge at just the right moment. The problem was that this approach didn't make it feel like you were controlling a nimble little fox. However, when Andrew played Bloodborne later in development, everything clicked. Bloodborne showed him that it was possible to have quote-unquote technical, challenging Souls-like combat with the speed turned up a bit. Andrew's favorite way to tell a story is to let it be. In other words, the story has already been told and you are simply looking at the remains of it. The idea of exploring a world and piecing together not necessarily the story, but your own interpretation of what happened or could have happened in this place is what fascinates him most. Therefore, he applied this concept to the storytelling in Secret Legend. Once he had the game's fundamentals figured out, Andrew began to realize he would need additional support to take the project to the next level. He first reached out to composer Terrence Lee, also known as Lifeformed. While Andrew could handle most aspects of the game, he couldn't write music, and he admits that the sound effects he made were pretty bad. At the time, Terrence wasn't sure if he could compose a soundtrack due to other commitments. However, they met at the Game Developers Conference that year, where Terrence agreed to take on the project. Around the same time, one of Andrew's friends introduced him to Kevin Regami, the creative director of Power Up Audio. After hearing how passionate and excited Andrew was about Secret Legend, Kevin was intrigued. Shortly after, Andrew sent him a 5-minute combat prototype to give him a sense of how the game played. But what really convinced Kevin to collaborate on Secret Legend was something he received just 2 weeks later. And then 2 weeks passed and he sent us what he called a macro prototype of the overworld. He said something like, "I'm probably going to throw all this in the trash, but I just wanted to get an idea of what it felt like to adventure, to find secrets, to do the whole Metroidvania thing." After playing for hours, Kevin couldn't believe what he was seeing on the screen. Our whole team was like, "Who the hell is this guy? He says he's deleting the whole thing? There's like a whole game here already. What is going on?" Kevin, a cryptography enthusiast who once created a game called Phonopath, which is all about discovering hidden passwords within sound files, was especially curious about the strange glyphs in the prototype. Impressively, after one sleepless night, he managed to translate the secret language into English. Following this, Power Up Audio sent Andrew a short video presentation to convince him they were the right team for the job. The presentation ended with glyphs on the screen, which took Andrew by surprise since he had never seen text in a secret language written by anyone else. He grabbed his notebook to help translate, and the glyphs decoded to "Sound treatment by Power Up Audio" and "Cool game, bro." Needless to say, that more than sealed the deal for Andrew. Around this time, Felix Kramer also joined the project, providing business and marketing support to help get the game in front of as many people as possible. With the audio and business aspects of the project in capable hands, Andrew spent the summer of 2015 creating a new build. To complete it, Terrence Lee and his wife Janice Kwan provided beautiful music tracks, while Power Up Audio crafted catchy sound effects. Later that year, Andrew was ready to showcase Secret Legend at events like PAX West and Fantastic Arcade. One thing Andrew vividly remembers from these events was that people struggled to remember the title. He overheard them mumbling variations on "The Fox Game" and "Secret Something or Other." It became clear that the project needed a more unique and memorable name, and that's how Secret Legend became Tunic. The following year was all about answering crucial questions. What is the arc of the game? What is the beginning, middle, end of it? Should it be more linear or should players be free to explore? What is the overarching goal? During the summer of 2016, Andrew went to Stugan, the Swedish game development retreat, to try to come up with an answer to all those questions. He knew what feelings he wanted to evoke and had a clear vision of the emotional impact the game was meant to deliver, but he struggled to translate that into a cohesive video game. Everything from interacting with objects to designing UI elements and refining moment-to-moment gameplay required extensive iteration. At one point, the game even played more like a point-and-click adventure. This genre is one of Andrew's favorites, and before he got the idea for Tunic, he had created several smaller point-and-click adventure games. One technique Andrew used was building a graph of dependencies. For example, you need to obtain a key before you can open a lock. After opening the lock, you receive the next item to use elsewhere. In other words, it's a series of hard constraints, or hard gates as Andrew calls them, that stack on top of one another and eventually lead to completing the game. Andrew attempted to construct something similar for Tunic, but it never really worked. As a result, one of the game's core design principles became soften hard gates, meaning players have more freedom to explore areas without needing specific items. The idea that a tool in a Metroidvania-style game is a key to progress is an enticing model, but more enticing, IMO, is knowing that even if you're under-equipped, if you get lucky, or maybe just bumble your way through, you can get to an area where you are not supposed to be, feeling that you are transgressing by exploring a place above your pay grade, so to speak. Being able to get in over your head is a cool feeling, and allowing people to circumvent what we think of as a Metroidvania experience is cool. Although development officially began in 2015, Andrew had unknowingly begun describing Tunic in one of his notebooks 5 years earlier. Notes like "actually discovering things" and "you were off the beaten path" became some of the building blocks of the game. The most important note, however, was "this was here all along." This concept became central to the entire game, which is designed around the idea of discovering things that were always there. The design principle of softening hard gates ties directly into this concept, as does the in-game manual that continually offers hints. As you play, you don't just find new things in your path, but suddenly the entire path that you traveled becomes littered with question marks. As Andrew fleshed out these question marks, he always considered what he calls the life cycle of a secret. This life cycle consists of 3 phases. The first phase is ignorance, where the player is completely unaware of the secret. Between phase 1 and phase 2, the player's motivation is driven by curiosity and exploration. In phase 2, knowledge, the player discovers something new but isn't yet sure what it means or how it works. At this stage, the player's motivation shifts from exploration to puzzle solving. This eventually leads to the inevitable aha moment in phase 3, understanding, where a question mark turns into an exclamation mark. Andrew personally loves phase 2 as he finds more excitement in figuring out how to solve a secret rather than actually solving it. He and the team would assign percentages to a lot of the secrets in the game. A secret they definitely wanted players to discover would get a very high rating, while those that were harder to find on a first playthrough would receive a much lower rating. For example, the room where you discover this stick is rated at 99%, since it's technically optional but almost essential. A secret path behind a waterfall leading to a treasure chest might be rated at 15%. During a GDC talk, Andrew discussed the concept of implementing secrets that aren't meant for everyone to solve, referring to them as either 0% secrets or content for no one. One particular secret in the game requires a significant amount of effort to discover and solve, even involving the player visiting an external website. There's also a way to unlock a secret prototype world involving a secret save file. Some 0% secrets are so well hidden that they exist purely for the creator's enjoyment. Of course, the team knew that some dedicated fans would inevitably discover these secrets and share them online. That's why they made some of them arbitrarily complicated, to foster a sense of community and encourage players to work together to crack the puzzles. That said, the most important reason Andrew wanted to implement 0% secrets was to cultivate a real sense of mystery. Players might get glimpses of them during their playthrough, or hear hush community chatter about something. Those types of secrets will subtly radiate a feeling of mystery out into the rest of the game. Tunic's combat and upgrade system went through several iterations. Initially, they were much closer to how Bloodborne and other Souls games handle these mechanics. In an early build, attacking enemies would drain your stamina bar, and once it was empty, attacking was disabled. In the final release, however, only defensive maneuvers drain stamina, and you can always attack, even if the stamina bar is empty. Dying in Tunic also used to come at a much greater cost, with players losing precious resources that could be used to upgrade the Fox. But Andrew felt this was too similar to a Souls game and wanted to implement something more unique, appropriate, and mysterious. By 2017, the team expanded again. Rebecca and Adam Saltzman from publisher Finji had already been mentoring Andrew and the rest of the team for some time, and in 2017, Tunic was fully integrated into Finji's portfolio. With Finji's support, the team gained access to professional QA testers, a significantly bigger marketing budget, and any additional resources they might need. To celebrate the partnership, a new trailer was released, revealing the game's title change. Andrew initially estimated that it would take 1 more year to finish development, but 1 year became 2, then 3, and so on. Everyone was working as hard as they could, but Andrew couldn't help but feel personally responsible for the long development cycle. He had a lot on his plate, from puzzle and level design to programming and learning how to create good animations. The main reason for the extended timeline, however, was that almost every model, area, mechanic, and piece of code in the game was scrapped at least once or twice, and then and rebuild from scratch. As his game design skills improved, so did his understanding of what the game needed to be, leading to many revised assets and scrap content. For instance, there was once an area that started out as a desert, meant to connect the overworld to the quarry. Although it had some good ideas, Andrew was never able to make it both beautiful and interesting. He revised it several times until it was completely transformed into a dark forest. After a few more iterations, Andrew lost faith in it and ultimately decided to scrap the entire area. In the end, Tunic didn't need another area, and he doesn't regret leaving it out in the final version. However, he does regret spending so much time on it, only for it to never see the light of day. Eventually, Andrew realized how much time he was wasting and learned to, quote-unquote, keep it in the garbage phase for as long as possible. He began creating assets quickly and sloppily until he was absolutely sure they belonged in the game. By 2020, much of the game was in a finished state, but there were still plenty of areas that looked like gray boxes. To speed up the process and bring a fresh perspective to the art style, the team hired Eric Billingsley. Eric is multi-talented, having worked as a programmer on Cuphead and done extensive shader work for other projects. Interestingly, before joining the team, Eric was working on his own solo project called Spring Falls, for which Tunic had been a significant visual inspiration. Needless to say, he was thrilled at the opportunity to work on the Fox game. Together, Eric and Andrew tackled the entire game, significantly improving its visual quality. Eric also handled many bug fixes and shader optimizations. As mentioned earlier, Kevin from Power Up Audio, along with Terrence and his wife Janice, carefully crafted the game's sound effects and soundtrack. Just as Tunic's gameplay and in-game manual aimed to evoke the feeling of playing an old NES game, Terrence and Janice wanted the music to be guided by their memories of what they loved about retro game soundtracks, rather than by what those soundtracks actually sounded like. It was important to strike a balance between having the music remain in the background during certain moments and take the spotlight in others. For instance, when the player wakes up on the beach at the beginning of the game, neither the Fox character nor the world has been established, so the music needed to support that mysterious atmospheric feeling. An upfront, adventurous melody would have felt out of place. On the other hand, during a big revelatory moment, the music needed to be just as impactful as what the player was seeing, if not more so. As the player progresses, the game gets darker, and the soundtrack needed to reflect that shift. Going from organic to more synthetic and digital sounds wasn't necessarily part of this big narrative arc. It was more that the dark parts of the game are also more synthetic, and so it just naturally fit together that way. Initially, you're drawn into this cute and colorful world, but there's always this hint of something under the surface, and going with the more textural sounds that we did gave us the opportunity to start bringing in stranger and darker sounds. Some of the spookier tracks feature choir samples performed by Jenna's father, who is part of a choir. Unbeknownst to him, Janice and Terrence once recorded a sample of the choir's performance, which they later used in the game. Meanwhile, Kevin took it upon himself to incorporate Tunic's secret phoneme-based language into the audio. He experimented with various ideas, including quarter tone-based approaches and rhythm or time-based patterns, kind of like Morse code, but more musical. More importantly, the integration needed to align with Terrence's compositional style, which often uses arpeggios. An arpeggio is a type of chord where the notes are played individually in a progressive rising or descending order. Kevin's solution involved converting the phoneme-based language, where each glyph represents a single sound unit, into sequences of notes played in ascending or descending order. This allowed him to match sound effects with corresponding words. For example, unlocking a door triggers a sound that contains the arpeggio for key. Terrence and Janice applied the same technique to the music tracks. It's another example of a 0% secret hidden within the game. A few months before Tunic's release, Andrew created a spreadsheet titled Tunic Content Complete before Andrew turns 36. Most tasks involve polishing certain parts of the game, fixing bugs, optimizing performance, and adding sound effects. However, the most daunting task by far was finishing the in-game instruction booklet. While the content was there, the pages only existed as rough sketches and mock-ups. It was crucial to Andrew to capture the physicality and visual sensibilities of flipping through an old-school manual. To achieve this, he hired artists to create beautiful illustrations and other graphics, while the doodles were done by Andrew himself. The team also put extra effort into replicating the artifacts of old print processes, even including visible staples. To make it feel as authentic and real as possible, Andrew built a real-world version of the manual and then proceeded to destroy it, folding, ripping, taping, and staining it. He then scanned each page individually to use in the game. After 7 years of dedicated hard work and perfecting every detail, Tunic launched on March 16, 2022. Both gamers and critics praised the game's visuals, its sense of exploration and discovery, and its serene soundtrack. While some were more critical of Tunic's combat and difficulty, the game overall delighted and surprised almost everyone who played it. It was nominated for numerous awards that year, winning the Outstanding Achievement for an Independent Game at the DICE Awards, as well as the Artistic Achievement and Debut Game Awards at the BAFTA Awards. Andrew never expected his game to become so popular and celebrated. I need to remind myself of how I was feeling just before launch, because that change at that moment was so dramatic. The most surprising thing is that what I assumed to be not necessarily a niche game, but something that has a particular sensibility about secrets and not telling you what to do and all that sort of thing. It made me think that some people would really like it and some people wouldn't. But the broadness of the appeal has been surprising to me and delightful. As of this video's release, the future of Tunic remains uncertain. Andrew has mentioned in interviews that the game was intended to be a singular experience, so developing a sequel would feel strange. Moreover, he poured all of his best ideas into the award-winning game, leaving him unsure of where to start if he were to create a follow-up. That said, in 2022, during Kevin's wedding, Andrew jokingly whispered in Kevin's ear, "Tunic DLC?" Although he later admitted he wasn't sure if he was being serious, it suggests that more Tunic content hasn't been completely ruled out just yet. Andrew has also mentioned that his next project might be something much smaller in scale, something he can create entirely on his own, or perhaps he'll bring someone else's dream to life. Whatever the future holds, as long as he gets to work on more video games, he'll be happy. When Gaming Bible asked Andrew how he wants Tunic to be remembered, he gave the following answer. For someone to have Tunic be their game, you know. Like, this was the game they played when they were a kid, and it filled them full of wonder. If it was actually one of a gamer's first experiences, and maybe that person is inspired and goes on to design games, that would be cool. I think that would be my treasured legacy for this game.